Hi and welcome to the third video in this series of basic face painting tips. Today we're going to talk about design placement. Now you might think, well, why do I need to know that? Because you just paint their face. But it is a little bit more technical than that. Our faces have got focal points on them, and you can go on the internet and find out a little bit more about this. But for the purposes of the video today, I'm just going to concentrate on the main ones, which are here and here. When doing a design, you've obviously got to work around the contours of the face, but you also do need to bear in mind the focal points. And what you ideally want to happen is that your designs either point towards the focal point or that they radiate away from them. For instance, if I was going to do an eye design here, I would have something here, and then I would have, let's say, a flower. Then I would have the leaves and the petals radiating away from it in this direction and this direction. You'll see lots of princess crowns, and they always have a design here and then everything points towards it. And yes, that is replicating a tiara, but it's also working with the focal point. It's making the eye go towards this area here by doing all the strokes that way. If you're doing an eye design, you can also frame this focal point. You see a lot of designs that come round here. But what they also often do is they follow around this line so that they end up as if they're pointing towards this one. Same up here, they come round in a C shape, which again is pointing towards this focal point. So just thinking for a moment about doing something like an eye design. If you look at the lines of these eyes here, they're nice and rounded. And if you were doing eyeliner, if we were doing makeup, you'd follow that round there and then you'd flick it out. But you wouldn't flick straight and you wouldn't flick down. You would flick in the same direction that these eyelashes are going. So you would flick up like that. And if you actually feel your face, there is a bit of a dent here. So to follow round under this bone is just the correct thing to do. If you do a line straight out or a line straight down, it doesn't quite look right. Same on the bottom. If you follow the direction of the eyelashes and round the cheekbone, it just all looks a lot better. So here you'll see I've done a couple of little one strokes. This one is pretty, it shows all the lovely colours in the one stroke, but it doesn't really sit very nicely. This one, however, because it goes round the eye and frames it and follows the contours of the face, it's much better. Similarly with these two, this one, it just looks odd because it's going against everything that the face is aesthetically telling it to do. Whereas this one, it follows the flick up there and then comes round, following the cheekbone, and then a little flick out just to give it some extra interest. Now, of course, there is nothing to stop you using something like this and covering it up. Maybe put some petals here and then work round so that, because this is actually pointing to the focal point, you could work with it. But thinking about quick on-the-job designs, you kind of don't want to have to do something that needs to be covered up or worked with. You just want to be able to do something like this that can be added to accentuate it. So for instance, on this one, you could easily then do some teardrops like that. Some extra little teardrops here. A few dots. And a couple of stars. And then there you've got a very, very simple but very, very quick eye design. And it's simple, and because it works with the lines of the face, it looks nice and it was easy to do. So if you are sponging, you basically need to keep the same principles in mind. So you either want to frame the eye, so do something like this. To do a frame around the eye, or something like this. That accentuates the shape of the eye. I'm just going to tidy it off her hair. As I may have said before, it's often easier on a real person rather than a board. So all you do then is just add in your details. I'm just going to do some simple teardrops here. And then on this area, you could do some detailing. You could do some stenciling, which we will cover later in the series, or you could do something like leopard print. There's something to fill the space. And guide the eye down towards the focal point. On this one, you could do something nice here, which is at the focal point, and then have some things radiating out from it. Just something simple like that. That's not a brilliant design, but it just shows you what I mean. It shows you the idea of having the centre piece at the focal point and everything else coming away from it. Or on this one, everything pointing towards the focal point that way. So now I'm going to show you 3 butterflies. None of them are the best butterflies in the world, but they're just to give you an idea of what I mean about placement. Now let's take this one first. Now you might think, well, okay, it's symmetrical and it's a pretty colour and it's not bad outlining. But the shape is wrong. The shape is wrong in a couple of ways. First of all, your wings don't point to the focal point. The focal point, which is here between the eyes, is where these lines should all be pointing to, but they're not. This line's pointing to that corner of the eye, this line's pointing somewhere in the middle, this one's pointing, and so on. And also, the body is too low down. You should never have a body that far down. Ideally, you want the head to be here where the focal point is and the body just under. And then thirdly, this has come down way too far. If you do this on a face, all it does is it draws the face down and it doesn't give a pleasing effect to your butterfly. Now this one's a much better shape. All of these are pointing towards the focal point, so it works really well. The bottom wings are slightly smaller than the top wings, which is correct. But what about this? This is just way too high. This looks like it's floating above the rest of it. So what you need to do, again, is to work with your focal point rather than against it. And finally onto this one. This is the one that takes into consideration all the things I've said about the focal points. Your wings are pointing inwards, towards, you're using the curvature of the face correctly, and the body is in the correct position between the eyes. Of course, I'm not saying that this is the perfect butterfly and that all your butterflies should look like this, but this is a good starting point. It's a good start to get you used to doing the shaping of the wings, the placement of the body, and pointing that way, so that when you come to do your own style, you can elaborate on what I've already done and make it your own. As always, I hope that has helped you, and I hope you'll join me for the next video.